afternoon and a really warm welcome to SERC's Entrepreneurship Discussion Panel, which we are hosting to mark Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021. A really warm welcome to all the SERC staff and students who are joining online, and to the students from other FE colleges across Northern Ireland and all of the members of the community. Today's live event is part of a series of digital content that the Entrepreneurs Club has worked very hard to create in collaboration with local entrepreneurs. So a warm welcome to a great thank you to all of those entrepreneurs. SERC staff and students, if you haven't checked out some of those brilliant video interviews and written interviews, head on over to the Virtual Entrepreneurs Club after this event and you can check those out, as well as our archived workshops. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our very esteemed panel of entrepreneurs and business development professionals. We are delighted and humbled to be in the presence of such talent and to have it all in one room. I'm just a little bit intimidated. So to kick us off, I'm going to start on the far end of our panel here with Ryan Skolin. Ryan is the co-founder and CEO of G-Science, an esports performance company that harnesses science and data to support gamers in optimizing their performance and well-being. In 2019, G-Science was the winner of the ESI London startup competition, The Clutch. Next to Ryan, we have James Blake, founder and CEO of the award-winning Vindicta digital marketing agency and owner and CEO of investment company Black Holdings Groups. Next to James, we have Terence Brannigan, SERC's entrepreneur in residence and the current chairman of several successful organisations, including Tourism NI, EpiQuest International and Serios Limited. Next, we have Karishma Kusukar, who is a multidisciplinary designer and creative entrepreneur and the founder of the studio Karishma's World. As the co-founder and co-director of Belfast Design Week, Karishma is an expert collaborator who brings together creatives and professionals to catalyse innovation. Next, we have Robert Ferguson, the co-founder of Utopian Digital Learning Academy and managing director of the highly successful 4 Gears Media, a digital marketing agency that combines meaningful data and creative production for client success. And last but absolutely not least, we have Claire McGill to my left, head of economic development for Ards and North Down Borough Council. Over the last 6 years, Claire has successfully led a team in creating the environment for businesses to set up, grow and thrive. A really warm welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. We're really excited to hear from each of you on a range of topics that I think are relevant not only to those who are listening in who want to set up and grow businesses, but to anybody who's interested in seizing opportunities and solving problems, because at the heart of what each of you does is really that one thing. And that's going to bring me to the first topic for discussion. In terms of a successful entrepreneur, from each of your own individual experience, what skills do they need to develop and how do they do that? Not a small question that we've started with.
I don't mind going first.
Yes, please, Ryan.
First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's fantastic to be here and to share some insights on the entrepreneurial journey. So I think going to that initial question, everyone here, I'm sure if we have a discussion about our journey to where we are to date, will probably have a very different experience. And I think the one thing I'd say is it's not one size fits all. But in my experience, some of the things and some of the skills I think that you would definitely help you in the entrepreneurial journey is having focus. I definitely know early days when I first set up G-Science, especially working in an industry like esports and gaming, there's a lot of shiny objects. And you're going from one thing to another, and that lack of focus really hindered our kind of progress early days. The second thing I think that you need is resilience. I'm sure everyone here has had lots of highs and lots of lows, but it's in them low moments, having that resilience and having that belief in yourself to keep moving forward and believing in what you're trying to achieve, I think is really, really important. Kind of tying into my initial first point, I'd say the next one is self-discipline. You need to be very disciplined. If you're an entrepreneur, most of the time you've got freedom. You've got freedom to structure your day, freedom to do what you kind of want to do. But with that power, it comes great responsibility. So I think that, really focusing on what I need to achieve here, what's going to drive the business forward, and having that disciplined process each day, really helps you get to where you need to get to. And I think the final thing I'd say is you need that determination. You need to be hungry. What you're trying to do is very difficult, and if it was easy, everyone would do it. So you really need to be hungry and you need to be focused and yeah, just believe in yourself and give it a go. So I think if anyone's listening, you'll never know if you're an entrepreneur or not if you don't actually get in the ring and give it a go, and you learn through doing that experience. So they're just my thoughts.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ryan. That sounds, like really, really important. And I am curious, actually, in terms, you've mentioned sort of focus, resilience, self-discipline. I know we have some creatives on the panel, and I'm curious how you manage the kind of creative side with the self-discipline, perhaps?
Actually, I was going to add on to your point there. I think, that sort of perseverance and that resilience is incredibly important. And I think, to add on to that as well, a lot of people have brilliant ideas, and I think what makes an entrepreneur different is being able to implement them. Because it's fine to have the idea, but if you do nothing with it, it just stays that way as well. And in terms of that sort of focus, it can be challenging when you have a lot of different projects going on. Like you said, you don't know which one to pick. There's so much you could choose from. So it's being able to, out of a massive number of ideas, take a few you think are going to be not just interesting for you, but also potentially commercially viable or sustainable in some way to turn into a business. But I think the skill that you really need is to be a really good problem solver, because you will have lots of challenges along the journey, which I think we've all probably experienced. And I think being able to solve those problems, not only with what you're creating, but also what you face along the way, I think that's a really good skill to have.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts on these skills or how to develop them?
I'd like to add something. I think both answers were fantastic, but I'm a massive believer in that skills, anybody can learn a skill, anybody can teach a skill, but very, very few actually master it. So all of those things that Ryan said about discipline and all that kind of stuff, you said about taking action, which is super important. A lot of people analyze, but never actually take action. And before you know it, the boat sailed. There's tens of hundreds of competitors in the market. It's saturated. And you always hear people say, that was my idea. I had that idea, or, I would have done that, but this happened or whatever. And I think it all comes back to your attitude and your mentality around taking action, but also having that self-belief and the mindset of, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to master it. I'm not just going to be skilled at it. I want to be the best at it. And that's kind of the ethos we apply across all of the businesses that I'm involved in, is that we totally want to dominate everything we do in the nicest way possible. But we're always striving for success. And I think that all originates with the mindsets that we instill, which is being super grateful for what we have, because without that, you're not going to do anything. But also being super ambitious to the future. And skills can be learned always, but it's mastering a skill is the most important thing, I think.
Wonderful, thank you. That's very inspiring. I know we've heard of lots of different skills there, and you're touching on, actually taking action, self-belief, resilience, determination, focus. To the students who are listening and members of the community who are listening and are really eager to be an entrepreneur, but are maybe thinking, well, how did these people develop these skills, or how did they get that self-belief? Are there any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think first of all we need to differentiate between skills and mindsets, okay? Because mindsets are innate, skills can be learned, as has been said. You can train people in skills, you can develop their skills, but mindsets are innate. And you've got 3 different mindsets, and this isn't coming from me, this comes from deep research. 3 different mindsets. One's entrepreneurialism, so you are or you aren't. You can't train somebody to be an entrepreneur. You are or you aren't. And entrepreneurs are people who create business. Second mindset is enterprising. And enterprising people don't create business. What they do is build business. So they grow a business. And the third one is process people, so people who manage business. Now, one isn't more important than the other. It's really important to understand that. So entrepreneurs aren't more important than enterprising people or more important than process people. The key is getting those 3 together. So if you're an entrepreneur, what you need to do is get enterprising people around you, and you need to get process people around you. And too often, entrepreneurs, and I've been there, I've done this, I've made this mistake of not having people around you don't listen to. So process people are really, really good at that. And if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, you need those people alongside you. That's what will create the platform for growth and for success. So mindsets are very different from skills. And if I need skills that are not present, I just go out and buy them. So I get people who have those skills, and then I train them up. and I develop them and let them loose. But we must not mix those two things up. Mindsets are different from skills.
That's a wonderful point in the sense of, not having to think that you have to do everything. So I'm sure everybody on this panel has a team or works with other people or collaborates. And I think that idea of, if you don't have a skill or it's not in your interests to develop that particular skill, looking to create yourself a network and be a multi-skilled kind of team. So thank you so much for that, Terence.
I'd just like to add just one more point to that and agree with all the things that everybody said, but the other bit is to realise that perfection doesn't exist. So if you hang around waiting for the perfect everything, you'll never get to do anything. So it is just about taking that dream, putting it, implementing it, evaluating it and going on and learning from those mistakes and having the resilience, as said earlier, just to keep going.
That's brilliant. I'm sure there's people sitting watching who are really pleased to hear that, Claire, because I think I've heard this from entrepreneurs time and time again, that if you wait until everything is perfect and that you understand everything, as you said, James, somebody else has put the product on the market. Exactly. So there's a level of, you have to be comfortable with some uncertainty and ambiguity and kind of put yourself out there.
There's a great phrase that encapsulates that I always keep in my mind, and that is speed trumps perfection. Speed trumps perfection. And that is so key and critical.
One thing I want to add just around that would be flexibility. So talk about resilience, and that's absolutely key because, we've all make mistakes, you get knockbacks, you get things don't happen the way you expect them to, or your plans don't come out the way you want them to. But I think the other side of that is about being flexible. And it's like having a clear goal about what it is you want to achieve, why you want to achieve it, but being flexible enough to understand that, being able to adapt, because you may have a great idea and you're running with that idea and you're sort of halfway down it, and then something changes, whether it's the market, whether it's the environment, or lots of different things can affect that. So being able to build flexibility as well as resilience into what you're doing, I think is key too.
That's brilliant. That's something we maintain in the enterprise department as well. So keep your eye on the end goal, but be flexible about the course of getting there. Well, thank you so much. What a brilliant start to the panel discussion. I'm going to move on to the next question. We are talking here, we've just spoken about what skills do you need to be successful. I'm quite intrigued to know how each of you define success. You've all set out to sort of set up businesses or support people in setting up businesses. What was at stake for you? What did you want to get out of it?
I'll go first on that one. Obviously, success is very subjective, and to everybody it's going to mean something different. For some people it's creating massive wealth. For other people it could be having a solid foundation for their family, or even just creating a lifestyle that allows them to spend more time with their kids and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think, having lots of wealth means you're more successful than somebody that, is spending lots of time with their kids because they've created that lifestyle. But I think for me personally, I grew up in a council house. My dad was a taxi driver. My mum was a charity worker. Didn't have much money. And I had a learning disabled brother that I cared for. So very early on in life, I learned a lot of harsh lessons to do with the opposite of abundance, scarcity, saving every penny, like scraping by. So for me, at a very, very early age, whenever other kids were thinking about like going out and partying or whatever, I was thinking about my future. And for me, that was a future that I didn't want to run away from. It was a future that I created that was abundant in everything, which is wealth, love, happiness, family, friends, everything. So I think that if you're striving to be successful, it should be in every single element. So not only the business aspect, but also the personal aspect, because if the personal aspect isn't there, there's no point in running around in Lamborghinis and Rolexes and fancy suits if inside you're dying inside. So success is so applicable to everything. And I think as an entrepreneur, you need to always keep that in mind, that it's not just a one-dimensional thing. It's totally, it's a huge spectrum of things.
Brilliant, thanks James. Nice. Off the top there we have that question of balance. So because often you hear from entrepreneurs that they sort of give their life to their business, but you're really keen to have success across the board.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, not saying I don't go all in. Like, I totally go all in my business. Like, I'm 100% taking action constantly and making things happen. But at the same time, you know, for me, right now, at this stage of my life, I can do that. I'm only 28, you know, and I'm reaping the rewards from building the business. I don't have kids. You know, that'll all come further down the line. So, subjectively, for me, I'm really happy right now, pushing all of my energy into the business, into my team, into scaling things. But I know that'll change someday, you know, and like it's flexible. It's never going to just be linear. Like, oh, I want to be super wealthy, but you know, what is that really? You know, because things happen, life changes. You know, I lost my dad a couple of years ago, and that itself totally changed my opinion on a lot of things. So yeah, I just think it's keep that open mind that what you want today might not be what you want tomorrow. So.
Yeah, I'd pick up what James said there, definitely. I think your success is very subjective, but it's also tied to what your own goals are. And I think the important thing, particularly I know in my own sort of entrepreneurial journey over the years, you know, once you achieve a goal, I view that's successful. See the goal, and that's then successful. So the next thing is, well, what's next? What's the next goal? And your success is really how you sort of perceive it to be, whether that's a case of, you know, whether it be more time with your family, you know, wealth gives you the freedom to be able to make, you know, various choices that you probably wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So if that's what motivates you, that's what drives, that's what your goal is, and you achieve it, that's a success. So I think it's all very much about you as an individual, what your goals are. But again, it comes back to the flexibility bit. I said a wee minute ago, is the fact that they will change over time. The goals I had when I was 28, for example, are very different from what they are now, 10 years later, sort of thing. So, yeah, I think success is what it is for you, really.
Brilliant. No, that's really great to know. And I know as entrepreneurs, that's one of the great advantages of being an entrepreneur, that you have that ownership and authority to sort of set the goals rather than sort of you're a manager or someone else. Great. Any other thoughts on success?
I was just going to say that, you know, a lot of us think about opportunities for ourselves and, you know, having a lifestyle for ourselves that's comfortable. And of course, you know, that's a big part of it. For me personally as well, it's about whether what I'm doing can create opportunities for other people as well. I think it's the nature of what I'm doing though as well. It depends on what projects you're working on, because some of them can be very much sort of self-led, self-driven, much more commercial. Other ones can have a lot more of a community basis or linking up with a lot of different people. And it is very project specific if you're looking into what makes a project successful. For me, I think it's having a good lifestyle, you know, being comfortable in terms of you're not worrying about money. But at the same time, you know, having that lifestyle and being able to spend the time with family and friends, because you find that often the more successful you get, or, you know, or the more work you get, the less time you have, and then you become time poor. So I think it's having that balance, being comfortable in your lifestyle, but also having enough money to be able to manage as well.
Yeah, I think the key here is in the question. You just look at the question, and the question says, how do you define success? How do you define success? Never allow anyone else to define what success looks like, because that's how they see success. You have to frame it in your own terms. So it's about your ambition for yourself and those around you. And it's interesting that, and it's been alluded to, your ambition for yourself and for those around you will change as you move through life. So if I looked at the ambitions that I had, it's interesting how they change. So my ambition was to get out into the world and make a place for myself. So I left here, and I went out in the world, and I ended up running, or creating and running, a $1.7 billion a year business in 44 countries around the world. And I come from a working class family. My father worked in the shipyard as a labourer, so it wasn't something that had been given to me. It's something that had to be earned. That was my first ambition, was to get out there and do that. And I realized that ambition. So my ambition changed. My ambition then was to come home and create a business. So come back to the place where I started and the place that I love. So it was then, how do you do that? So I created the ambition for coming home and creating and owning a business here. So I bought a business here. It turned over 21 million, and I had an ambition for it to hit 150 million within 5 years. We had 168 million in 2 years and 9 months. And I know that because I still have the accounts from 2 years, 9 months in. And we had hit 168 million. And I said, and when we did 150 million, I would step back as chief executive of the business. And that's precisely what I did. So on the 3rd year anniversary, I stepped back and I said, right, the next phase for me is to create other businesses, but help other people create their own businesses. So look at what their ambitions are and help them realize their ambitions. So your ambition for yourself changes, and so it should do. And it changes through circumstances. It changes through demand and through lifestyle. It changes through opportunity. So don't let people thrust their ambition for you on you. Have a clear ambition for yourself. And then be flexible enough to change that as circumstances change. And you will change as you go through. And you will want to deliver different things in your life. So for me, it's back to the question, how do you define success? Don't allow anybody else to define it for you.
Thank you. I think it's really great. It's wonderful to remind, especially our younger students, that you are basically, as you said, Terence, there, defining success. And whether you're self-employed or employed, to always remember what is important to you and what your priorities are. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to check if Ryan and Claire, you have any last thoughts on success?
I would maybe just add one other point, is just making the time to take stock of the things that you do along the way. So as people said, you define your goals and you go for them, but quite often people just keep running sort of forward. So it's important, I think, just to sit sometimes and look back and say, this is actually what I have done, and give yourself a pat on the back, and realise that some of the things that you may not have considered as success have actually happened to take you then to the next stage. So it's just sometimes just taking that pause and stop chasing the end of the rainbow all the time.
Yeah, and reflect on what you have done and enjoy that.
Yeah, and realise that some things that you may have thought have been a problem actually were successes.
Brilliant, thank you. Ryan, any last thoughts? Everyone has said a lot already, but...
Yeah, I just want to say, it's amazing hearing the insight from everyone, and I would totally agree with what's been said before, and especially what you just said there, Terence, about you defining your own success. I think that's super important. For me personally, over the last 3 years of having been on the startup journey, I really look at success in terms of growth, personal growth. There's a quote I really like, which is, you can have outer riches but inner poverty. And that really connects to me, because I think about who I was when I started my company at the age of 23 to who I am now, and the growth that I went through, and also things like we talked about success, but the other part of success is failure. And I was so scared early days about failing. I was like, shit, if I fail here, everyone's going to think I'm a failure. I'm embarrassed about it. And I tied my ego into my company, which meant that then in them early days, it actually paralyzed me, because I was so scared of failing that I wasn't optimizing for success. And through that journey and through that inner growth and work I've been doing myself, that's been really freeing. So now I'm always thinking about, okay, failure is just part of the process. It's part of this success journey. And that's just an insight for me. I definitely think, thank you very much. I definitely think as a young guy, definitely as well, there was a lot of ego attached there. And I must admit, I've been truly humbled throughout this whole process. And I definitely try to exercise a lot of gratitude for what I have and what the journey is and what I'm on, and try to focus on the process as much as staying focused on the end goal as well. So success is a ever-changing thing, but I think it's just about being present in the moment, enjoying for what you have now, and just keep going.
What a brilliant note to move on to the next question.
Sorry, just before you do, can I just pick up on that word failure? Because it's really interesting. There's 2 things about failure that I've had to learn. One is don't fear failure, but the other is fail fast. So if you're going to fail fast, move on. So don't fear failure, but fail fast.
That's brilliant, yeah. And I think that I'm really actually glad, Ryan and Terence, that you brought failure into this question around success, because the enterprise team, when we're working with students and we were just delivering design thinking, and part of that is the lean approach and getting people to be iterative and understand that, as you were saying, Terence, it's better to fail fast and go through various iterations, and to accept that if you're going to do something big and you're going to do something different, failure will be a part of it at different stages. While we're talking about success and goals and failures as well, what a great segue into the environment. I'm curious, at one time sustainability and being green was a USP for many companies, but I think we're in a very different culture and climate, both metaphorical and literal now. What role do environmental outcomes or sustainability play in your different business activities? And I'm actually, Claire, I'm going to come to you first on this because you're supporting economic development. Could you talk to us a bit about the role of sustainability in that?
Well, I think it's become hugely important to the extent that it just now needs to be embedded in everything that we do, and the plans that we have as a council, even sort of moving forward, as well as sort of helping to support the businesses, is looking through the sort of the prism of what we call the three-legged stool. So it's that three sort of approach of sustainability, inclusivity, and environmental, and looking at sort of each three sides to make sure that then that balances up. And I think it just has to be inbuilt into everything, that gets planned sort of going forward. It can be challenging. I know that some of the businesses that we work with, green, sustainable, can sometimes be pushed to the side. People sort of tell us that I'm too busy running my own business, that's almost like, sorry, you're adding another problem. It's another complexity. But when we sort of reframe the conversation, sort of thinking how things can be done either more ethically, either cheaper, some of the new models sort of coming in can help people look at a different way and increase their profitability if they just shift things and change and do audits. It changes the focus. That it's not an add-on, it's just something that people then need to look in. And as a council, we're constantly sort of looking in to see what we can do, ourselves, even in helping people to recycle, trying to think differently, educate. And again, it's like all the things I think have got to do with entrepreneurship or enterprise or whatever. It's feeding that back down the chain. So the more impact that we can have, not just at the business level, but then it translates into homes, it translates into schools, and even from first off when kids get out the door, teaching them then those lessons so that it just becomes a natural part.
It's brilliant. It's wonderful you're saying that if business set that tone and embrace sustainability, that's filtering down into the rest of society. So you're really placing that kind of responsibility and opportunity with business. Any other thoughts on that, Terence?
Yeah, I have to say I get frustrated when people talk about sustainability, because for me it limits our ambition. And what I mean by that is, so we've gone on a journey in some of the organisations which I'm leading, which is what we call Beyond Sustainable. And Beyond Sustainable is regenerative. So it is not good enough to sustain what we have to regenerate. And when I talk about regeneration, I get frustrated with the lack of ambition, which is moving from beyond sustainability into regenerative. And it's also about the scope. Too often people are talking about, when they talk about sustainability or even regeneration, they're talking about the environment. The environment is only part of it. So if you look at Northern Ireland, for example, what we need to do is have a strategy that is regenerative, but is regenerative across the board. So it's not just the environment that we regenerate, but it's communities we need to regenerate. It is the built natural heritage that we have we need to regenerate. It's our landscapes, seascapes, and it's regenerating our culture as well. And that will lead to regenerating our economy. And that regeneration of our economy will actually affect people's impact on people's health. So it's beyond sustainability. It is regenerative, and it is not just the environment. It is the whole ecosystem that we need to look at. And we need to have plans and ambitions around that whole ecosystem. And it needs to be beyond sustainable.
What a call to action.
I was going to add to that as well. So I was just going to say as well, I totally agree with that, because I think people misunderstand what sustainability is. And sometimes they think of it as just being packaging or just about the environment, but actually it's so much more. But the other side that people don't talk about is digital waste as well, because people don't think about that when they're designing digital products and services. So that's a big thing that's sort of coming up in terms of discussion with sustainability online and creating digital products that also use up a lot of energy and storage and space. So it's a lot of interesting conversations to be had around that as well.
Really interesting, thank you.
Totally agree with that. The other thing as well, if you look at entrepreneurship, and sustainability and everything else that we talk about environment, I think it presents a phenomenal opportunity through technology and through design and through everything, because everybody here is working in a creative sort of space. It's in some level, or coming at it from your side of things at council. But I think as an entrepreneur, I think there's an absolute wealth of exciting opportunity out there right now, because technology, how it's advancing, what we're doing in terms of tech, the ability to utilize technology and advances in technology to reduce carbon footprints, to be reducing waste, all those types of things. So certainly, I think it should be looked at as an opportunity as well. And ideas that look at those key 3 areas of environment and everything else. Both from a tech, like we're designers. What we do, we're all about content, and so we are conscious of what you said. Like there's big debates about the carbon footprint of data centers and all this type of stuff. But I think the design, if we can bring design into products and product development to make them more environmentally friendly, make them less of an impact, things like that. Those are really, really big opportunities, I think, right now for young people getting into, starting their own businesses.
Brilliant. And just before I move on to the next question, James, Ryan, any final words to inspire, any entrepreneurs around environmental outcomes or sustainability?
I would like to say something. I think maybe this is a bit of a curveball, but I think there needs to be more education around it, because I'm sitting here listening to all this amazing feedback, and I'm sitting here thinking, I know nothing about this. Like, I honestly don't know anything about this. It's not my bag. I don't pretend it is. I did buy an electric car for 2 months and then I hated it. But, it's not my thing. So I think that if I was educated on it better, I probably would be applying those principles within the businesses. But at the minute, I don't know enough about it. So, perhaps maybe there needs to be some sort of outreach done to help entrepreneurs and people in business to understand this better. Because I think it was said that as an entrepreneur, your head's so buried deep in delegation and running your business and all the aspects of that it is one of those things that nearly appears as another issue to deal with that you don't really have the time for. So if anyone wants to speak to me about it, I'd welcome the conversation, because I totally just hold my hands up. I don't know anything about it, so yeah.
You're speaking to the woman who coordinates the eco committee, so James, yeah. I'm going to be pigeonholing you after this.
Help me out, sort me out. Yeah.
No, that's a really valid point, and I think I have to do a plug for SERC here. I think our department is the Enterprise, Entrepreneurship and Environment Department. So I think educational organisations are starting to recognise that. The environment, as you were saying, Claire and Robert and everyone, it has to be an integral part of it going forward. And with our enterprise challenge, some of our judging criteria are sustainable and green. How sustainable is your project? I don't know if somebody wanted to.
I could maybe just add one other thing, and I'm sort of thinking that the last 18 months, 2 years, people probably have even started to think differently along those lines without even realising, without giving it a green agenda, or even thinking that they are needing to be more sustainable. I mean, I'm just thinking the way, when products weren't available, or people are reusing things, or people are borrowing things, or going secondhand. So it's already sort of slowly beginning to happen, and if we can sort of keep that momentum without putting like a big sort of label on it, I think things, are shifting just in that sort of green, sustainable way. Like whether it's everything from, women having to sort of go and look for clothes elsewhere where they couldn't sort of get them, or things online, or then borrowing things, and a whole raft of different sharing. We've had some interesting conversations just there with some young businesses then in saying, right, an awful lot of the bigger businesses maybe downsizing, are getting rid of equipment, or getting rid of desks. So making that available for other people, just saying, well, can anybody else use this, as opposed to sending it off to landfill. So there's a whole sort of new life beginning to happen, without a lot of effort, although a lot of other initiatives have to happen first.
Can I just give you an example of take a problem like this and how entrepreneurs think about it? And it's quite often in a wholly different way. So if you take the issue that Krishna just talked about, which is data and data centers. So for example, in the near future, and I mean the near future, it is predicted, or it is measured, not just predicted, it's been measured that south of Ireland, 70% of its energy would be consumed by the production of data. 70% of its energy gets consumed by the production of data. And you take that issue of data, and you take the issue that data centers find themselves in. One of the key issues is they need to cool. They need a lot of water to cool the data center. It produces a lot of heat. Heat is energy. Why are they cooling it? Why don't you take the energy, the heat, and turn it into energy? And now you're starting to think in a wholly different way about the production of energy. You've now taken something which we require in technology. You now take something which is a problem, which is cooling it down. You don't cool it down. You just use heat exchangers to take that and turn it into energy. That's how entrepreneurs think. They don't think about just how do we stop the problem? How do we turn it into an opportunity? How do we generate success out of that issue? And that's entrepreneurial thinking.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Taryn. So if we can approach the problem of the environment and climate as an opportunity for innovation and sort of entrepreneurialism, what a great point to end on there. And I have to say, I just have to chip in myself from working with young students and mature students, but particularly the young students. I think the next generation are going to demand so much more of business in terms of sustainability and the environment. I work with some of the eco committees. We in the enterprise team support them, and those students are so switched on and so demanding and so ambitious in terms of what they want the future world to look like. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant to see. We were talking there a bit about obviously data and digital content, which brings me on to the question of social media. And it would be remiss of me not to ask the next question with two experts in digital marketing sitting on the panel, Robert and James. What role should social media play in modern marketing? Is it indispensable? And what are your top tips for kind of businesses using it effectively?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go for it, yeah. So I think there's a couple of angles to this, because social media is not just one thing, it's a whole box of tricks. But I think that you can approach it from the aspect of organically, which is, probably the most cost-effective way to do it. But, to give you an example, I've developed quite a big LinkedIn following and following on other social media platforms and stuff like that, and that always trickles into the businesses, because it's easier to build a brand within yourself than it is to build, social pages for companies quickly, because you need to have content, you need to have a strategy in place. So a lot of the times I'll lead with my own stuff, and I think my LinkedIn's reached like 10 million people in the last month and a half or something, which is incredible. But off the back of that then trickled into the businesses, and we generated a lot of business off it. One of our biggest retainers that we have from a company in Essex in London, outside London, they spent a lot of money with us, and they came across my profile. That's how they found us. Then they seen the content that we were distributing, and then they liked what we do. So that brings me on to the next part, which is the content. So like, for example, Ryan's there today. He's creating content right now. Like, we're always creating content. And that's so important because it gives insights into your business. It puts faces behind the brand. So if you go onto any of our social profiles, you'll see our staff, you'll see our growth, you'll see our new head office, you'll see the guys playing ping pong at lunchtime and only lunchtime. But do you know what I mean? So like, you'll see all of the things that make us tick. And we also deliver our message of how ambitious we are. So that allows us to grow organically, and it attracts people to us to work with us, work for us, or become a client. And then the other side of that is the paid side, which I think is insanely important. I own e-commerce businesses, and they function solely off paid media. So I think we were speaking about earlier, like Facebook, and some businesses will go all in on Facebook. They'll spend tons of money on it. And like, to give you an example, one of my e-commerce stores recently launched, done about 130 grand in its first month, all online, just direct sales, no hassle, very easy. But I spread that out across Google Shopping networks, display, Twitter, LinkedIn. Like, it was constant, it was omnipresent. Whereas if I had went all in on just Facebook ads, and Facebook decided to ban my account, like we were talking about, that would be me out. That would be the business gone. So I think it's about maintaining that kind of mindset of omnipresence, putting lots of content out there, and not putting all your eggs into one basket, building your brands on all of the channels that are available. Because at the end of the day, if you're not going down the paid media route, it's bloody free. Why not? Like, why not just create content? And I think somebody touched on earlier on about perfection. and you'll never reach perfection. So just do it. Just create the content, get it out there, build your brand, build the company, and it's very easy to do once you get into the swing of things. Get a strategy in place, and you can't not succeed. You can only improve and get better, and over time it can lead to a lot of revenue. And some businesses function solely off social media. So yeah, I'm a massive advocate for it, not being biased, but like I think every business should be running like a media company, creating content, creating ads, and just pushing it out there.
What he said, really, I suppose. But yeah, no, he's 100% right. And I think our focus at 4 Gears, we double down on content. Yeah. All the algorithms that sit behind the social platforms nowadays are all content-led. So the more content, I think the only bit that maybe James didn't touch on there for us is it's about being consistent with your content, both in terms of, obviously from a brand, it's fitting with your brand aesthetic, it's tied into who you are, what your values are within your brand, all that kind of stuff. But also being consistent, not just in terms of the type of content, what you're talking about, becoming that sort of subject matter expert, personal branding in your own space, but also the consistency in terms of how actually you're posting and where you're posting. 100% right. We've dealt with a number of clients in the past who had invested very heavily, specifically on Facebook, through no fault of their own. Boom, account gone, business gone. Do you know what I mean? And it's literally that damaging and that quick. So we would be very, very vocal and saying about adapting strategies across all the different platforms. But we really can't stress about content enough. Content is king or queen, do you know what I mean? I think the reality about it is there's a real education piece needs to be done around that, from our own industry, because I think there's so much talent in terms of designers, creators, videographers. There's so much talent out there, and I think one of the pitfalls is that a lot of people don't appreciate the value of content yet, or don't appreciate the value of what designers and creators are actually making. So we would be very big on content, and we think that's definitely, we know it's going to be the way forward. If you look at how the crypto space is going now with the NFTs and all of that sort of space, again, it's all content. So we would go content, but what James said as well, really all of be everywhere as much as you possibly can.
Could I maybe just qualify that by sort of 2 things? One, sort of determining why you're doing it and who is your audience. Because I've seen so many people just get on the bandwagon of going, need a social media account, need Facebook, need to get onto LinkedIn, but they haven't thought through who's their target market, who are they trying to interact with and engage with, and is it meaningful? And secondly, do you have the resources to do it? Because some of those things, some platforms need a lot more input and a lot more, as you say, regular content. And if you're not there, people are wondering, well, what's happened? Something's gone wrong. So you need to sort of slightly plan it through and not just do it just for the sake of it. That social media, I think, gives a fabulous opportunity to engage, to tweak, to learn and gather sort of a lot of data that can be useful for your business. But it has to have a purpose. And it's only indispensable if it's part of, somebody said then, the overall package, or driving traffic to somewhere else where you can convert people, and sales or people then, or do whatever it is that you want them, to do for your business. So I have a bit of a qualified.
Totally agree with that. It's all about the strategy at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? You have clients and you'll have multiple campaigns with multiple strategies running across multiple different, channels and everything else. So 100% right with that. Also as well, I think, particularly when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you can be quite, talk about the focus bit, but it's important to always make sure that, you should be having your audience, various different touch points, because who you're going to be talking to are going to consume the media, engage with that content in very different ways. So a lot of time needs to be put into the planning of it to make sure that, you're not just doing that sort of broadcasting to everybody. But yeah, it's an exciting time to be in it.
Can I just add something there? Because I think they were both amazing add-ons and points. And just going off the back of what you just said about broadcasting and just putting stuff out. And you're right that you don't want to just be throwing stuff out there and hoping it sticks. There has to be a strategy to it. But where we have found much of our client success, and we would have clients that are generating millions through their website on a monthly basis in e-commerce or whatever it may be, and where we have found large increases in terms of conversion rates and sales volume is due to remarketing. And anybody that knows anything about digital should understand remarketing, but effectively I would always be nudging everybody towards that, because for example, if you're paying the money out to broadcast your ads and you're niching it down to a certain audience or specific interests or whatever, and they like your product, to click on your website, they're on there, and then they get distracted because their phone goes or whatever, you've lost them. Effectively, you've paid for that customer to visit your website. They're no longer there. They've walked out of your store, and who knows if they're coming back. With remarketing, if you structure your content properly, you can actually start to appeal to that person again. So that audience gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but it gets higher in quality, and that's where you get your sales and conversion. So I would definitely suggest everybody looks into remarketing. It's super powerful.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Some really key points there, I think. Obviously creating content and being consistent and putting that content out. And then as Claire, you were saying, but making sure you have that strategy and that content is meaningful and reflects your values. And then also the point there on remarketing. So if someone is engaging with you, following up on that. Brilliant, thank you so much. I think, so for our next topic, I'm really keen to bring Karishma, Terence and Ryan in. I think you guys will have something to say about this one. It's actually a quote I'm going to start with. So it's from Damon John, who is a CEO and a bit of a TV personality. If anyone watches the American Shark Tank, you might know him. He said, entrepreneurs are dreamers in one sense, but they're also realistic and they take affordable steps when they can. I'm curious to know, from the creative perspective, from the startup perspective, and from your very experienced perspective, Terence, what is the balance for you, and how do you achieve that balance between having vision, dreaming big, but also thinking realistically and pragmatically?
Okay, I might kick this off. I suppose one of the points you made earlier, Terence, actually plays into this, because I think it's all about having a good team, because being an entrepreneur isn't about doing it alone. And I think if you are the dreamer, you need someone there to help make it a reality, or you need some sort of balance, or maybe that is within yourself that you're trying to find that. But I think it's about being ambitious, but also seeing what's out there at the moment and looking at researching, finding things out, because you don't know everything about everything, and it's always a learning process. So I think that's really important, to see what's already there, but also what's happening next in your arena, in your sector, because obviously, with design, it's across so many different industries. So you're constantly evolving and seeing what's happening next. So it is important to be ambitious and to dream big, but then you also need to see how you can achieve that. And sometimes it's breaking it down into lots of steps, because often, if you see, say Forbes 30 under 30 and all of those lists, you only see the sort of end result. You see like people that have achieved a lot, and there they are having all of their successes. But before all of that has happened, and for many other entrepreneurs that are not featured in those lists, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's often broken down into many smaller steps before reaching that big dream and goal. So I think that's important as well, that it might not be that you start off and overnight suddenly you achieve the thing you always wanted to, but maybe you're starting off small and starting with one thing that then slowly evolves into that over time, and that could be years as well. And I think that's sometimes something that's a bit hidden from the entrepreneurial world, that, it's all these overnight successes. This young person that's 21 has achieved this thing overnight. But the reality is there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it can take a longer time than people imagine. So I think, yes, dream big, but also have a bit of reality to it, in terms of, don't set yourself under that pressure to have something just overnight be successful.
And that maybe comes back to what Claire was saying as well about, breaking things down and as you're saying, like, you can have that big goal, but in the short term, reflecting on what steps have I taken towards that goal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because this locks into what we were talking about a moment ago. It's the social media bit, and because this thing of having the ambition, so describing to yourself what that ambition is and what it means to you, and then putting around you the tools that will actually help to drive that ambition. And it's just been said rightly, you cannot do this on your own. So you retain the ambition, the dream, you retain the direction of travel, but having done so, You need to be very, very clear in who you're trying to talk to. So who's your market? Who can buy this product or service that you're trying to get out there? And how do you build? So how do you get to them? And that, if you look at the whole social media discussion, that's about defining your market and then how do they consume media? Because however they consume media, and it will be different for different products or services or different markets, or different demographic, you then have to design your media campaign around that. And it is not always social media because it depending on the market into which you're going. So for example, Saga, who are selling to over 50s, actually their biggest approach to marketing will not be social media, just for example. So it's being very clear on who your market is, and then the messages you want to get out there, and you'll determine what media you're going to use to reach them. And then it's about getting out there with the right messages in order for them to buy, to get them to buy. So if you look at that process, you're the entrepreneur who has the ambition and who has the drive and who has the focus in terms of what you're trying to do. But you need people around you who understand the marketing process, understand the market, who you're trying to reach. So there's your sales and marketing bit. That's your enterprising bit. They're the people who are actually going to build the sales of this product. Okay, and then the third thing is you need process around that. So you need to put in place the machinery that makes that happen consistently and happen efficiently. There you've got 3 different mindsets working together, understanding the part that they need to play in order to realize that ambition. So there, if you go back to your question, there's the thing of the dream, the ambition, and then the pragmatism that goes behind that to realize that dream and ambition. That's why it's incredibly important to value those who have other mindsets than you and make sure that you put that together as a very effective machine, a very, very effective and efficient machine.
Brilliant. Thanks again, picking up on that question of team and multi-skilled. Ryan, I'd love to hear from you. It was 2019, was it, that G Science kind of began?
It was, yeah. So I just want to quickly touch on the 2 points you said about adding too much more. Team is so critically important. I think one of your roles as a founder, especially if you're the original founder of the company, is to get people in the car with you to go on the journey. And quite rightly said, they should be complementary skill sets. And it's great being able to tell people we're going to change the world. And I truly believe you need to have that vision to get people inspired to want to be part of the journey. But to actually make that dream become a reality takes all the things that have just been mentioned. A clear roadmap, an unbelievable team, and the processes and teamwork and everything else. And there's a bit of luck that goes on it as well along the way at the end of the day. But I think, yeah, in terms of G Science's journey as well, that's what I've learned. You need to surround yourself with people who've been there and done it before. When I first set up a company, I didn't have a Scooby-Doo what I was doing. I really didn't. I thought I did, but I certainly didn't. So I sought out advisors and experts in their certain areas to help me upskill and learn fast. So I think that's super important. One of the things I quickly just wanted to touch on, just because we've got some social media experts in the panel here, you quickly mentioned Web 3.0. I think right now we're going through a technological revolution, especially in the games industry, because we're one of the beachhead industries that are adopting this technology. For a lot of companies, now what we're seeing is non-endemic brands entering the gaming space. It's a $178 billion industry, bigger than movies and music combined. Be really interested to know from your point of view, and everyone on the panel, the question we've seen on the agenda was about Northern Ireland and tech and how we can adopt these new technologies to move forward. What do you see the future being? We've talked about the metaverse. We've seen Facebook, the biggest technology company in the world, rebrand to Meta. What do you see from a social media perspective? How companies in Northern Ireland can stay up and innovate and stay on these current trends?
I don't think there's any one sort of clear answer on that. What I do really believe in, if I'm honest, though, is the young people and the opportunity for innovation that's coming through. The majority of us are all digital natives. Do you know what I mean? I think what we're going to see is almost like a digital industrial revolution, if you want to call it that. I think design, content, and everything that goes in and around that is going to be so critical to everything that's moving forward. In terms of the opportunities that exist within, the crypto landscapes and all those, again, phenomenal, because what we're going to see is, I believe anyway, a sort of decentralization of a lot of media and communication and everything like that. So it's in a very exciting time for all of that space. I think within Northern Ireland, how can businesses then tap into all of that? I think there needs to be a lot of education done around the value of social media and marketing and content and design. Because a lot of businesses go, I'm a plumber, what do I need to know about NFTs or content about, do you know what I mean? Or you'll get other organizations that, just aren't maybe as well geared up for innovation. I think, in terms of the innovation strategy for the country and for the region, there's a lot of good work being done there, but I think there's an awful lot more could be done. And I think we need to start listening and paying more attention to the trends that are coming through in this space, and looking at ways of being able to innovate business models, so whether it be service innovation, disruptive innovation, and how we can integrate digital technology now into what would maybe be traditionally viewed as non-digital businesses. So I think, it's a challenge, but I think there's massive opportunity that exists with that for people in the digital space particularly. Does that answer your question, sort of?
Yeah, certainly it does, yeah.
I would maybe just add to that there needs to probably be a wee bit more joined up thinking between government departments and education and again families, because even and again to hark back to the period that we found ourselves in the last sort of 18 months where people were forced to go home, and so many people aren't au fait with technology, so many people don't have access to technology, and in many ways the schools aren't geared enough. Some of the programs that are run are funded by banks or other institutions. So we need to come collectively together, to share sort of that knowledge and to make it just again an integral part, of life, and make it accessible, and to try and just, as I give everybody, an opportunity to participate, and so that it becomes not something that needs to be learned, that can just be built on, as we go forward. But that's a big challenge, because people are still working, in their different silos and their different parts, and it's the challenge is to bring those bits together. And I think that gives the opportunity then to help bring forward, that brings the future sort of closer. People can dream the future better.
Can I add something? I think that if we were in a room full of business people right now, I'd probably ask who in here is on TikTok, and I can guarantee you less than 10% will be on TikTok, and it's a massive platform right now. And I think that it stems from caring what other people think and thinking, as you say, I'm a plumber, I don't need that, or I don't want to be embarrassed doing whatever it is, creating the content that's functional on the likes of those channels, that works on those channels, because I think we spoke about it already earlier on, that on all these different channels, the formats are different, the context is completely different. What you post on LinkedIn won't be applicable to an audience on Instagram, for example, or whatever. But I think it all stems from fear, and I wrote an article about this on Forbes.com, and it was about how it's the fear of change that's stopping businesses really fully embracing all of this stuff. But look, listen, it's going to happen. There's no way around it. It's already happening. It's happened, and there's a couple of survivors latched on that aren't adapting, aren't sort of innovating to come up to scratch with this stuff, and they're not going to be around much longer, and that's just the truth. So I think that it needs to be a case of, yes, it's scary. Yes, there's a lot of innovation going on, and in the gaming space, you're going to see this, like it's insane, but it's happening. And it's the reality, and there's no point in pretending it's not. So it's just, you have to embrace it, adapt or die, basically. That's the way I see it.
I think just last bit on it, I think, business model design and, the whole change management process needs to become, have a digital focus within it now, I think, because, as James says, it's going to be critical. The world is changing massively, and it's changing very, very quickly. Do you know what I mean? So The other
It
thing
is critical already.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just to bring in sort of design side of it, you mentioned about making technology more adoptable and easier to use. 100% right. Whenever everybody face to face crashed, the number of people, how do I turn Zoom on? Do you know what I mean? It was like that kind of thing. So design's going to play a big role in that, in terms of how do we actually design products, design services, design everything that's going to make it more adoptable.
Brilliant. So we're talking there about both design and sort of that digital focus in business models as being sort of the future of innovation. Any last thoughts on that, Terence or Karishma? Or innovation in general, innovation in Northern Ireland or in your industry?
Well, I actually think that, a lot of these things could be applied to sectors that traditionally haven't really adopted any of these things. Like you even look at politics, for example, and that's obviously contentious here. But I think that, that could be vastly improved by so many of these processes. And you can see government is starting to bring in designers and work with design, say the Design Council, and they're bringing in people that are user-centered designers, for example. But I think there's so much more that could be done, and that's just one sector. There's so many different sectors that have traditionally not used these processes that could be completely reinventing themselves in a way and thinking in a more sustainable way for the future too. So I just see there as being lots of opportunities and lots of potential. And again, entrepreneurs could delve into that and take that forward too. So I think it's quite exciting actually as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, we need to be very clear in defining what we mean by certain terms. And there's a couple of things that I'll pick up on that have just been mentioned in a moment. But if you look at the difference between invention and innovation, and people sometimes get those mixed up. So first thing is invention is exactly that. So it's creating something new. Innovation is not invention. Innovation is actually changing what's there and making it better. And we need innovation, but we need invention as well. And you need R&D before you get invention. So you need to do the research and development bit, then you have invention. And I've got a guy who we now refer to, whom I'm helping and supporting, who we now refer to as an entrepreneur. He comes up with incredible ideas, which are practical ideas in terms of products, particularly. Some are service-driven, but most of them are product-driven. Now, what he can't do is turn the invention, the inventive idea, into a business. You need an entrepreneur alongside him who can actually turn that into, so take that invention and turn it into a business idea. So an entrepreneur or an inventor is different from an innovator, and that's different from an entrepreneur, and that's different from an enterprising person, and that's different from a process person. So understand, first of all, we need to have clarity around what we're talking about. And just talking about the design element, a lot of people, so we all know how successful Dyson has been as an organization. So you're talking about this guy as a multi-billionaire. And people think of him as an engineer or an inventor. He's neither. He's actually a designer. His background is design. So what he took was not an invention, because a vacuum cleaner existed. What he did was he got his engineers to innovate. So make it better. So turn that basic commodity into something better, and then the design made it more attractive. Now that's clever, that's absolutely clever. So he knew what he was good at, the design part, so he made it attractive for the market. But he got people, so he had somebody who came with the idea of turning the vacuum cleaner into a bagless vacuum cleaner because of what the issues, and then a great design, and then great marketing, getting the message, knowing the market he's going to go for, and getting the message and pointing that message in the right direction, and creating then a design around that, not just in terms of the product itself and the packaging itself, but in terms of the messaging and everything else. So there's a process of somebody who's been incredibly successful, but it's understanding what part everyone plays. So there is a whole process, a whole ecosystem that you need to address. So if you're going to change the economy of Northern Ireland, which is what we're seeking to do, you've got a new economic strategy, which is called the 10X strategy. So develop our economy by 10 times, and the decade of innovation. So there is massive opportunity, and if you look at that strategy, it might be a dry document to most people, but if you look at it, it's actually pointing you in the direction of, as an entrepreneur, where you should focus your attention, because you will get the support here in this ecosystem. So I would tell everybody, I know if you find it difficult sleeping at night, get out the 10X strategy and the decade of innovation, but it will actually tell you where you should be thinking in terms of new ideas, new inventions, and innovation, and in terms of entrepreneurialism and enterprise. Have a look, and you will see markets where you should be focusing your attention.
Brilliant. What a great steer. Thank you so much, Terence. I'm conscious of time. We have a few more minutes, and just with all of that fantastic information that you've given, I'm imagining that there are people watching this who are inspired, who are eager to go out there and set up their business and run their business. So one final question in our last few minutes. Where and when should people access help? And I might come to Claire on this point first, because I'm hoping you maybe have some sources.
Yeah, absolutely, sources. And I mean, the first thing is absolutely recognising, and I think that nearly everybody, as made reference to earlier, is recognising that you can't do it all by yourself. And it's almost impossible that somebody has all the traits, to successfully sort of run a business. So it's recognising and being self-aware of your own strengths and taking time to do that. And if you are either, the dreamer or the process person, or the person who's good with numbers, or just the person that loves sort of getting out there and connecting with people, it's trying to figure where and what you're good at, and stopping and then saying, right, where can I get the extra help? And then bringing that in, at the right time. And even in recruiting, I mean, the old sort of phrase that people recruit people like themselves, again, that's, a trap that many people sort of fall into. But again, it's quite often then taking that time to say, I need somebody else who can be the mirror of what I do. And it's a journey the whole way along. I don't think there is like a start point where you think, I need help now and I won't need help again, because the world's evolving and so many things need to keep developing. So it's an ongoing process, and being able to tap into that. And there's the difficulty and the challenge I think that we have here is that everybody's confused as to where to go for help, because there's so many sources, and it's trying to make it easy for people. So part of it is using, your own networks, or depending, whether that's geographically, the own sort of business networks or chambers or council sort of, well, I would be saying that, wouldn't it? But there's a great sort of wealth and resource available on your doorstep, or the college, and through different people. But it's just then putting out the feelers, and people will always be connected to somebody else, and will always be able to refer onwards. So it's critically important that you don't think you can do it all by yourself.
Thank you, Claire. And entrepreneurs, any words of advice on that when someone is getting started? How do they access help?
Yeah, I would say that actually, sometimes you can be up against a challenge, because I think one of the points you made there was actually saying about how people maybe recruit or also maybe invest in people that are like themselves. And that is, I think, still a big challenge here. So if you're like a woman like myself or a minority, it's a different experience walking into one of those rooms and pitching or asking for money compared with someone that maybe fits what the panel is looking for in terms of what they think an entrepreneur or an investable person is. And I think the thing there that comes back in is that resilience and being willing to just keep pushing forward, because anyone can be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be from a particular background, or you don't have to have a certain level of experience or qualification. You can start early, you can start late, you can start being an entrepreneur, at whatever age. So I think it's just taking that chance, but also just pushing yourself forward and being confident enough that you deserve to be there. Because people might, try and push back and tell you otherwise, but you have to just keep going and show up and just keep going and do it, because you can.
Brilliant inspiration for us all. Any last thoughts on that?
Can I add something? I think obviously having help and a mentor is fantastic, and associating yourself with the right people, but I think it's important that you don't seek advice from the wrong people as well. And I think that it's innate in us as human beings, especially for loved ones, is to protect them. So, for example, I remember whenever I started, I was 23, it was the same age as Ryan, actually, which is pretty cool. And I remember 90% of people around me were like, don't do it. Like, you've got a job, you're doing really well in your job, you're getting a really good pay. Like, who else is a director at 23 and all this sort of stuff? And, for me, if I had listened to that advice, God knows where I'd be now. You know, so I think it's getting the advice from the right people, but also realizing that sometimes people will say, you know, don't do it out of a place of love and safety, because they obviously love you, they care about you, they want you to be safe. But as an entrepreneur, that's just it's not in the playbook for me anyway, personally. So I think it's just important to get advice from the right people, and also just to have fun with it as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not here forever, so I think you really need to be enjoying it and associating yourself with the right kind of people, and you know, it's an enjoyable experience.
I have to end on that note. I'm sorry. Sorry, Ryan, did you want to add one last thing?
No, I totally agree with what you just said. I think that's so important. You got to enjoy the journey. We only get one. But one thing I wanted to mention, just for anyone who's listening, I massively benefited from the support of the Northern Ireland technology ecosystem. I participated in the Catalyst Co-Founders Programme. I was very lucky to get on to the Ignite NI Technology Accelerator, Propel, and through the support of Invest NI as well, you know, had funding to be able to give my business opportunity a chance. So I think that there are so many networks in Northern Ireland that you can benefit from, and I would just say to anyone who's interested, you know, reach out to one of the many networks and just get started. You're going to learn as you go and enjoy the process.
Can I just say one final thing? So where do you start? It's very simple for me. This is probably one of the best places around. I work with other organizations, and the problem is that quite often young entrepreneurs worry about two things. First of all, where's the money coming from? And secondly, you're asking me to build a business plan. I don't have that experience, don't have the time. And by the way, bureaucracy kills entrepreneurialism. Bureaucracy kills entrepreneurialism. So here what we do is we don't ask you to do a business plan, and we don't ask you to worry about the money. You got a great idea, we'll put the support mechanisms in place. So we'll bring the process. We will bring the people who can help you build the business. So we'll bring the enterprise and people alongside you. We'll take your idea, and we don't ask you to create a business plan. We just help you take the idea and change it into a commercial product or service. So no bureaucracy around this place. And if you've got the great idea, and we'll help you build it into a product, we'll find the money. Believe me, a great idea will always attract money. So that if I were starting out, this is where I would come.
Brilliant, Terence. Thank you. Terence, you've done the plug. I don't even need to do it now. Yes, for SERC students who are watching, or if you're a former SERC student, as Terence just said, we have the Entrepreneurs Club, and we can provide wraparound support if you have a business idea. You can also get one-to-one mentoring. So please do reach out to us. You can find us through the Virtual Entrepreneurs Club Microsoft team, or you can email us at gettheedge@serc.ac.uk. Panel, a massive thank you. This has been so informative, but also really inspirational. I know I have learned so much today, and I'm sure everyone who is watching from campus and from home has learned a lot as well. I'd like to say a really big thank you as well to the creative developers for all their hard work for setting up the live stream, and to the enterprise team who organised and promoted this and worked very hard to set everything up. Thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. I think that's us.